You're going to watch this video and you're going to say, this guy is a terrible editor. In most video channels, they figure out what they're going to say. Sometimes they write it down. All mine's coming out of here. It's just completely off the top of my head, so it's kind of manic. I get that. And in most channels, they speak in short bursts. They'll say a few things, stop. They'll say a few things, stop. And the reason they do that is because they're editing and they're parsing things out. They'll have ideas. So they talk about one idea, they stop. They talk about another idea, they stop. So that when they do the video, they can cut one out or add another one or move them around or however they're going to do it. But when you watch the video, remember, I suck at editing. Merry Christmas. I had a couple of questions come in from some viewers of my channel. And I'm going to have to talk about this because there are people out there that are running Hotshot that don't seem to understand about that little sticker that's on the inside of the door jamb of your truck. That little sticker on there can get you in more hot water than you can possibly believe. That little sticker has on there your GVWR. And the GVWR is what the DOT state troopers are going to look at. Now, when they pull you over for whatever violation they might have found or they found, if they think you're overweight, if they think you're running non-CDL and you pop up, you got your CDL and say, I'm sorry, but I've got plenty of room here on my CDL license to run everything I got on that 4-car trailer. And the officer says, but hold on a minute, you're driving an F350 or a 3500 series pickup truck, and I happen to know that when I check that little door sticker, it's going to tell me 9,900 pounds on the rear axle. And that's definitely a 4-car hauler with more than 9,900 pounds loaded on that rear axle. And he would be right. Your truck, if you have a 350 or 3500, is going to restrict the amount of weight that you can put onto the rear axle at 9,900 pounds. That's the manufacturer's suggestion. Don't go over that. The truck will handle it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you can take an F350 and load that bad boy up to 15,000, 16,000 pounds, and that gigantic axle rear end is going to hang in there. It's going to do okay. Now, how long it'll last and at what speeds that it can take at that are all up for subjective, opinions. But the reality is, because it says that on that sticker, 9,900 pounds, that means that you cannot run more than 9,900 pounds. And all he's got to do is pull out those little fancy mats that they have in the back of those, the Tahoes and whatever else they're driving, lay them on the ground, have you drive up on top of them. They check the front axle weight. It's going to come back with about 5,400 pounds, maybe a little bit more, but around 5,400 to 5,800 pounds on pretty much all the 3,500, 350 series pickup trucks. But that rear axle with 3 cars, if you don't have the right 3 cars on there, that rear axle is going to come up to over 9,900 pounds. If you put 4 cars on it, guaranteed over 9,900 pounds on the rear axle. You can have a Volkswagen Beetle on that on the top up there on the 4-car, and especially if you got a flip out, you got a 3 with flip outs for 4, 100% chance that thing's going to have over 9,900 pounds on that rear axle. Because that truck as it sits there, is probably leaving 4,000 pounds or so, maybe, over the rear axle to get to the 900, the truck weight itself. And there you go. You're going to be over that. Now, what do you say? Well, wait a minute, Forrest. Hold on just a minute. I've done this 100 times and it's never harmed. You're exactly right. You could get away with it 99 out of 100 times. But it only takes that one time of not getting away with it, of going through the scales or going across there. A lot of people think that when you go across the scales, they're just doing a general GVWR. When you pull onto that scale, they have you pull in, and you pull on that scale, it has the ability to weigh the axles. Now, sometimes and most times, they don't enforce that on your typical dualies. They don't enforce it, but they can enforce it if they know their trucks, they know their stickers, and if you get a state trooper in most states, if they're in there, which sometimes they are, and they see a way, or if they're interested in a way, because they see you coming down the weigh station drive there, and that little fancy camera goes to take a picture of the side of your truck to see what your MC number is, so then the AI that they have in that computer inside can tell them all about you before you ever get to the first set of lights and says green this way or green that way. But when you have a crayon piece of paper up there with a, or magic marker on the side of your truck. I saw that one time, a Sharpie written on the side of the truck. Those are already red flags. And so when they pull you into the weigh station, they can say, okay, you've got 5,500 in the front, which is within their realm of what they want to see from that sticker on your door. And they already know what kind of truck it is, and most of them have experience, and they know what the sticker on the door says. If it's a 3,000, if it's a 3,500 or 350, it's going to say 9,900 pounds. It's going to say it. They're all the same. Every trooper knows that if they've ever looked at one, and they have. So my advice to you, if you're going to run a 4-car hauler in any way, whether it's a flip out or the actual easy 4s and stuff like that, you're going to have to get yourself a 4,500 or 450, because the 4,500 and 450 have a 12,500 pound rear axle. Now that's pretty hard to do with 4 cars. It's pretty hard to push over that 12,500 pound mark unless you put like a big truck up on top or something like that. But again, even at 12,500 pounds, if you push past that, if you do have a big truck up top or something, which I can't even imagine doing that, but if you did, that 4,500 pounds, that F450 or that 4,500 with that 12,500 pound rear axle, it's not going to make it. So how do you stop all of that? If you have a CDL and you're going to run 4 cars, you should be running a 550 or 5,500, preferably the 550. The 5,500s in the Dodge, well, the Dodge 5,500s looks like a pickup truck, but either way, that thing has a 14,500 pound rear axle weight. And I'm not saying nothing's going to get you there, but most things are not going to get you there. Even a 5-car hauler is not going to get you there. And some people say, well, the trailer is going to handle most of the weight. It really doesn't. And I've done these experiments to find out, what's what. If you take and you load the cars on a trailer, or freight if you got a flatbed trailer, and you load the cars on there, about 6 feet, and let's say you have 3 axles, a triaxle setup. You can have twin tandems or just two singles, but whatever wheel setup you've got. And the front wheel, the very first wheel you come to moving down the trailer, from that wheel forward at about 6 feet or so, depending on the configuration of the trailer. If it's an easy 4, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit closer, actually. But if you've got a 3-car wedge or a wedge with flip outs, you get about 6 or 8 feet in front of that, maybe. And a lot of the weight then begins to transfer into the truck. And then by the time you get to 12 feet or so out, it is pushing almost all the weight in the truck. You're at 60-70% in the truck after about 12 feet. And of course, obviously, the further you get the truck, if you're at the truck, so if you're in any of the wedges or something with the car is actually over the bed of the truck, that's 100% of that vehicle weight is on the bed of your truck. So if you have a 4,000 pound vehicle in the very front, and I'm just using a wedge for example. If you have a 4,000 pound vehicle in the very front, that's 4,000 pounds that are directly on the truck. If you have another one behind it that's another 4,000 pounds, that 4,000 pounds, pretty much 3,700 or 3,800 of that is in the truck. The one behind that, the one on the back that's, maybe towards the front of the back wheels or whatever it is, now that one's 100% in the rear axles. So you got to be careful how you load cars as to how much you put on that. If you're driving the 350s and 3,500s, now listen to this. If you're CDL and you think to yourself, you know what, I can put anything I want to on there because I'm CDL, I can run over 26,001 pounds because I'm a CDL driver. The problem is that sticker on the door. If you have a CDL and you exceed that sticker on the door, you can still be ticketed, you can still be put out of service, you can still have to unload vehicles, all that. If you exceed the trailer's GVWR, let's say you've got two singles on the back, 2 single axles on the back, you could push that. You get you a dually on there and a van and a big so-and-so. But by and large, if you have a 3-car trailer and you're not overloading the trailer, it's typically harder to do to put over 9,900 pounds on there. So if you're going to drive, and here's the conclusion, if you're going to drive a 3,500 or a 350 dually and you don't want to have problems with being put out of service, you don't want to have problems with unloading cars in Podunk, Arkansas somewhere on the side of the road and then get ticketed because you left the cars on the side of the road and they were towed, and that even creates a whirlwind of other problems we'll get into some of the time. But if you want to avoid all that and you've got a 3,500 or 350, I know this sounds crazy, but you're going to have to run that thing. Even if you have a CDL, you have to run it as if you may not have a CDL. And the reason I say that, you can't really load the cars on there and get over 26,000 pounds in such a way that you're not going to push that rear axle over that 9,900 pounds. Now, I've done a lot of studying on this. I've done a lot of comparison because I lease trailers too. And I can tell you, I had a guy tell me one time that that's not true with a 3-axle. He said if you take a 3-axle trailer, then more of the weight's distributed to the rear axles because the axles go closer to the front. And he's just right. So if you look at a 2-axle trailer and you look at a 3-axle trailer, he's right. That last axle is further to the front, but it's still the weight drop off as you head towards the front is still so severe that it doesn't really make a difference having that other axle, other than it keeps your GVWR on the trailer from being pushed, because effectively, if you've got 3 axles, you've got probably a 22,000 pound GN on it. So if you're running a 22,000 pound trailer, it's going to be really tough to get past it. And here's another reason for that, because remember, that rates the rear 3 axles at that point at 21,000 pounds. And like I said, 12 feet in front of that rear tire towards the truck side is pushing about 60% of that weight forward, and it goes higher and higher till you're at 100% by the time you get to the truck. So 21,000 pounds would be tough to put on those. And whenever I see a 3-car trailer with 3 axles on it, I think to myself, they must be doing that just because they occasionally go over that, maybe they occasionally get up there and weight, and not realizing that the weight they're putting on that truck axle can CDL or not, that weight on that truck axle can send them into all kinds of problems, get them a nice big fat ticket and cars on the side of the road. If you're going to drive a 3500, CDL or not, you're going to pretty much have to restrict yourself on that thing as to how you load cars and how much weight you put on it. Don't think just because you got a CDL you can go anywhere with it, because you really can't. But that also goes for a 4500. I've seen 4500s, 450s, with 4-car haulers on them. Like the 3500 and 350 series truck should never have a 4-car haul in it, period, because you're going to exceed that back axle weight. If you have a 4-car hauler, I've seen them on 450s, and that's fine. The 4-car hauler is not going to exceed that back axle weight with 4 cars on there unless you do something stupid, like if you're using an Easy 4, not the flip-out ones. The flip-out ones will get the same problem as the 3-car wedge. But the Easy 4, you could put something on top. And I've actually seen guys, I can't believe this. I saw a dually up there on top one time. This guy drove a dually up on top and then put some cars on the bottom. That's really dangerous. That dually has so much weight on the top. It's offsetting so much of that trailer weight because there's 10,000 pounds. That it's just an enormous thing. And the funny thing is, with the dually up there, you couldn't put anything but 3 vehicles on the trailer. So what was the reason for getting the dually? Typically, when you look at the load boards, the dually doesn't pay any more money. It's not like they pay you based on how heavy something is. Whether he had a Hyundai Elantra or that Chevy dually up there, it didn't matter. It was still the same 70, 80, 90 cents a mile or whatever the heck he was getting paid. It's still going to be the same. He was just creating more problems because with a dually on a 450, with a dually and 2 significantly sized other cars, he just might, and I mean just might, push enough axle weight to get that 12.5, take over that 12,500 pounds, because that's a 10,000 pound dually. And the one thing about those 4-car, like the Easy 4, is the one that I like to call in the belly down there, is pushing 100% of its weight into the truck. So if you have 10,000 pounds, and he had to have it over the truck part because he couldn't leave it out of the back. It's just that the way that back ramp on the Easy 4s is made, you really can't do that. So he had it up over the truck backwards to relieve some of the weight off the truck, but he still got 10,000 pounds on there because even though he turned it around, 100% of that weight, because of being on the top, 100% of that weight is going into there. If you look at how those top ramps are connected, the bulk of the connection is in the very front of the trailer where it connects. Sure, there's some rams and other things in the back of that, but they're still connecting at past the 75 or 80% mark to the front, well over that, probably closer to the 90% of a mark. So a 10,000 pound truck up there is putting pretty much 100% of that 10,000 pounds on the back of the truck. That combined with the truck weight, combined with the car that's in the belly, as they call it, you could easily see even a 4,500 or 450 possibly push over that 12,500 pounds that's allowable by law on the rear axle. So even with the 4-car, even on a 450 or 4,500, you got to be careful. And I know everybody's saying, they never do that. I've never been stopped. I've been 15 years on the road, solid. Don't even go home anymore. I've never seen this happen. All that's going to happen is one time. All that's going to happen is one time. Then you're going to get on your FMCSA on the safer, it's going to show out of service. And if it has more than once, out of service, out of service. And every time you get an out of service, gives your insurance company another reason just to ching and charge you more money. 5500s now, if you get a 5500, you're gonna definitely not outrun that. I mean, unless you tried to get, I actually saw a 6-car on a 5500, which you can do. With 6 cars on a 5500, could you get past that 14.5? You probably could get past the 14.5. I've actually seen some 15.5 5500s out there that are running. I think it's the Ford F550 that runs a 15.5, or maybe it's the GM, but one of them runs a 15.5 on the rear. And if you have that, you've got a lot of weight you can handle there. But again, if you start getting crazy with these dualies and you start loading them up, you got to think about that. But so if you start adding it all up, does it make a lot of sense to run a 4-car hauler on an F350 or 3500, given that you're going to be over an axle weight? The fuel you burn is going to be crazy. You're pushing that truck to its maximum limit, so things are going to break. It's going to cost you brake. The brakes are going to be a lot more worn because of the weight you're carrying around. It really doesn't. I really want to say that you should stop thinking about your trailer as a visualization of the testosterone floating around in your bodies, because that's what most people do. They buy these trailers. They think that if they get the biggest trailer and the most cars possible and load that sucker up heavy with their CDL they have in their wallet, man, they're going to make so much money. I can guarantee you that if you're doing that, a non-CDL driver with a 3-car trailer staying in 26,000 pounds and less over the long distance could make as much money as you do over the long distance, because of all the things we just mentioned, all the extra maintenance and stuff. If you're running a 3500 with a 4-car, and they're running a 3500 with a 2-axle 3-car staying at 26,000 pounds or less, it's just incredible. The fuel mileage alone can almost bridge the gap, much less any kind of repairs or maintenance that are cropped up because you're overweighting that rear axle. And if that rear axle ever goes out on you, on 16 between Atlanta and Savannah, I saw a dually that was carrying a Mini 5 on a 350, F350, Mini 5, and I saw the dually come off. The dually came off. The axle broke. It finally gave way, and it came off, and off it went to the races. 2 wheels and tires, easily 400 or 500 pounds with the wheels and tires, 400 pounds, because remember, it had a piece of the axle, it had the disc, and what was left of the drum, and everything else. I don't even know if the caliper, maybe it was in there, who the heck knows, but it was off, and it was going bye-bye. It went over, hopped over the center thing, and was coming at me and some other people, but luckily it missed everyone. Didn't hit the semi that was behind me. And I tell you, it was a terrible thing. But the guy had a Mini 5 on a F350 Ford. So you need to think about those trailers. And don't put so much into the trailer as you think, well, I'm a big boy now. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to pretend like this is a semi. It's not a semi. It's a dually. And you can make good money with dualies. I'm all for it. That's all my company is dualies and car haulers. Plenty of people make a lot of money in this business. So don't let the testosterone get you into more than what you can pay for with a ticket. Thank you for watching, by the way. If you have any questions, you can ask them below. Thank you.